So, this is our first book club for the Schopenhauer Cure. And my first question is, what was your first impression of the lead character, Julius?
That's a good question.
So I'll go first. The him in general, I couldn't help but think about like some of his behaviors, and especially finding out about the melanoma. I felt like he was exaggerating things a little bit, but maybe that's just me, that he automatically went to, well, now I'm dying. And I just didn't feel like we were there yet, really. But maybe I downplayed it. I'm not sure. um, but I thought that he was maybe a little dramatic, and doom and gloom is what it seemed like, which is sad for a therapist to be doom and gloom.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that as a therapist he kind of used any type of coping skills that a therapist kind of would have in their toolbox. But at the same time, like, he's human, and as therapists I can't expect us to react how we expect our clients to react after treatment. Like, we're human. We're gonna have similar reactions the way our clients are, and we're not gonna be like, oh, okay, I'm gonna use this coping skill. So I kind of think that, yeah, he kind of jumped in there, like Ashley's saying, and exaggerated a bit, but at the same time he's dealing with death, and like, I feel like I would be in a kind of shocked state myself, and kind of maybe react similar and over exaggerate and stuff like that. Hey, I'm dying.
That was kind of interesting how he, even kind of the main character, kind of admits that he got a little obsessed with his client. I thought that was kind of interesting, like, just that he kind of was open about that, at least in his thoughts, that he was admitting to himself that he kind of was obsessive about that one client specifically. And it made sense, I guess, because it was such an interesting case. But I thought that was interesting to look out for.
For me, I overall, my first impressions of him really just in the first 8 chapters is he seemed to kind of intellectualize a lot of stuff. Um, he did it. Yes, he kind of jumped to I'm dying. That was kind of my first impression too. Like Ashley, he's literally just got started in this process. Why is he thinking he's dying? But the book did talk about his percentage levels were not great based on what he had. So um, I thought really more overall he tried to be very intellectual about a lot of stuff. Um, one thing that stuck out for me was his views on religion, and some of that connection to him he did not find as a positive and felt like it was more of a negative even for his clients, unless I misunderstood what he said. Um, and I wondered, and I think he may have even mentioned it himself, maybe there's something to the religious side of things. And I also wondered if his staunch distaste of it kind of seeped into his counseling sessions, at least in his earlier career. Because I would imagine, we're all new into some of this therapeutic field. Um, I've never been an actual therapist, so even though I have some history in social work, that one-on-one, I think it's very hard not to kind of be very careful about any kind of implicit bias and stuff like that. So that was kind of my first impressions of him. And Angel, do you want to tell us your first impressions?
Sure. It kind of hit close to home because I've had melanoma. And so when I was reading that book, I was like, are you kidding me? He's dying with it. And so it was just, I kind of saw a lot of my reaction the way he was reacting whenever he found out, because it is kind of like, I'm going to die. And till you really find out what all's going on and what the procedure can be. And so I was just very shocked because I had never heard of this book or, didn't know anything about it. And then it goes into him being at the doctor's office and, being diagnosed. And I was like, oh, man, and now I'm going to be paranoid and want to go to the doctor and have all my moles checked again. So it's one of those things. But I felt it like a connection with him.
Well, now I feel awful for my comment.
Okay, man.
Well, I mean, it was just the whole thing of, and I understand, because a lot of us, I think, to do what we do, we have to kind of go to worst case for ourselves, and I get that. But initially, just saying, okay, this mole looks weird, I felt like he went to the
She's froze.
Yeah, she's frozen on us.
Uh-oh.
the
Ashley, you're frozen.
no, I'm dying. Like this is it. Is that all?
This is bad.
Well, I think we probably hey.
Is that better? I'm sorry.
We didn't hear any of what you just said.
Well, it's probably best that you didn't. So.
That's great.
No, all I was just saying was I felt like he started just kind of, and it's that catastrophe type of thinking of as soon as there's something that is horrible that's going on with us, that we automatically jump to the worst case.
That's true.
And I found it interesting that he wasn't fixated on, let me reach out to my family, let me spend more time with my family. He kind of saw that they have their own lives and he didn't want to be a burden to them. But let me go back and make sure and see if I helped any of my clients. That was different. That was different for me.
That's a good point.
Yeah, he almost didn't seem interested in the fact his children were coming and visiting with him. And I thought that was interesting because, that's your support system. And then, hey, I'm going to go see this client. Like, that just shows you his work has become his life, even though he has children, which, your family is supposed to be a huge part of your life. That's not what's important to him. His work is what's important to him. I found that interesting. And that also shows me we need to kind of have boundaries, because I don't want work to be that important to me that I hit a point where I'm like, oh, forget my family. The last thing I want to do is follow up with clients, like, if I'm in his situation. I don't want that.
Very solid points. It kind of leads me into another question with him. Are you all pretty? I'm sure we all are, but familiar with the Erikson stages of change? Mm-hmm. And he is in, and I apologize, my notes aren't quite up here. But I believe that he is in that integrity versus despair phase or stage, where people really start to reflect back on their life and, come away with either a sense of fulfillment or regret and despair over a life misspent. So how do you all feel like he's kind of navigating through that right now?
I feel my first thought is that he's kind of distracting himself, like by taking such a like a full on just load of trying to like figure out this client. So I think it's interesting. Even there was one part, I can't remember where it was, but talking about that he started to get even more in despair and sort of slapped himself out of it. It was like, man, if I only have 1 year left, I want to make the best of it. So I think it's just kind of interesting that he's kind of falling into the gloom and doom and despair, but also kind of just trying to run from it at the same time, I feel like. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like even though he's trying to run from it, he's trapped in it though. Like he still keeps coming back to like he failed and what did I do wrong in my life? Like he's trying to make things better. He's trying to figure things out, but he keeps coming back to, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
I'm interested to kind of see, because I have not read past chapter 8, but just so far, he is holding a lot of stock in this one client. And it's just like, surely you have, and he's still practicing. He has, it sounds like, groups that he does now, because he talks about having to rearrange them and stuff like that. But that he's fixated, like y'all were talking about, on this one client. But it's like, for whatever reason, this one client holds so much stock in, well, he doesn't apparently feel like I was successful, and so therefore my entire practice has not been successful. And I don't understand why this one person, and yeah, he's interesting and maybe was a challenging client just because of his demeanor and everything, but if you've seen so many people, I don't know, it confuses me why him and why there's that much stock that he puts in to his opinion and wanting to know what he done right or wrong with him.
I think that's a good point. Angel, did you want to jump in here on that?
Well, I was wondering myself if there was something going on with Julius that, like, and I don't really know how to say this, but he has some kind of issue to where he feels like he's the one that he didn't fix. So that's why it's like eating at him. Maybe he felt like the others, he was able to help them, but that's the one that he just could not help. And that's why it's like just bothering him.
Yeah, I think that's a very solid point to have looked at your life and feel like this person. And I kind of wonder if he's focusing on this fella, because it was such a glaring challenge that he felt defeated at, and he strikes me as somebody that feels like he was a high achiever in his life. Mm-hmm. And so he's putting a lot of his stages of grief and stuff into this fella, and processing through, if I fix this guy or figure this out, then my life is going to be complete.
Like meaningful. My life and time here has been meaningful.
Right. And so I think he's definitely in that end stage of Erickson's, but I think he's falling into kind of a trap more of where a lot of clients, like Samantha said, who don't utilize their coping skills, where you get hyper focused on something instead of, okay, let's take a deep breath and really figure out, on the whole of things, is it really that catastrophic, my life, if I don't fix this one person? though I hate that word fix, but um, so I heard, I think Paige talked earlier about the stages of grief. Did you all recognize any particular stages of grief that he had gone through? I know there's actually several things out there about the 5 stages, the 7 stages, the 9 stages. I still stick with the 5 stages of grief. So if you all stick with or do more than that, that's fine. But I only do the 5, which are denial and isolation. The second one's anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So did you all notice, and I think you already touched on this a little bit, any of the particular stages that he'd gone through?
I feel like he's kind of going through acceptance in a way. Like he's like, hey, I'm dying. Let me do what I can right now to prepare for that. Like, let me figure out what I did wrong with this client. Let me kind of prepare my groups and prepare my clients for what's coming, you know.
I feel like he didn't stay in denial very long.
No.
Just almost skipped it.
I'm pretty sure that just didn't happen.
Ashley, how about you?
I agree with Sam and Paige, and I don't really know that he's went through any of the stages. He's just there. That I've got this. I'm dying, and I've seen other people, because of course the stages, it's something that's ongoing. It's not like, well,
Right.
I'm out of denial, so I'm in anger or I'm mad about it. And I've literally seen people go through all 5, and then it's like we start circling back around and skipping into different ones. So I'm interested to see kind of how he progresses with it, and kind of what his thoughts are with this. But I mean, I agree with him. I feel like right now he's accepting, probably more so than he should be. But I don't know. He's just he's a different duck, and maybe in my mind, in reading it, I'm thinking, I hope that that's not what I would do, and maybe that's what it is more so than anything, is that it's a personal thing for me. I hope that's not the route that I would go to. And I think that Sam mentioned it too. You look at your family, that's usually your main support system. And to rely on the acceptance or praise from clients, it's a little sad that that's the focus. I would hope if I was dealing with facing death, that would not necessarily be my focus. But I don't know. That's what hangs me up.
You hear of people being workaholics and stuff. So that's what I think of when his clients' opinions matter more than like him spending time with his family. It's like they kind of became his family.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that too, Angel, maybe that did become so much of his family and his small group that he's in, or his therapeutic group. I don't remember what they called it, but with the other professionals, it did seem like that was more important. And they did mention the fact that his kids were in other places. And I think it almost struck me that he was using that as an excuse, that his kids had their own lives. And I understand not wanting to burden your children, and you don't want to cause them more issues. And we don't have a lot of the backstory about when his wife passed away, how that process was. But again, he almost seems like he's really trying to intellectualize a lot of it. It did talk about him going through the despair phase and isolation, not talking to his kids, not telling anybody. And then I think, like Paige said, he kind of snapped out of it really quick and tried to really focus. But I almost feel like he's in denial because he is so focused on this person being his life achievement. So if I am so focused on my work still and what is going to be my legacy, it's not like he's taking time to reflect. It's like he's diving in and ignoring what's really happening to him. That's how
That's interesting. And I think that that's interesting, and of course not wrong in any way, but I think that's an interesting way to look at it.
How so?
Well, and again, it's not wrong. But
I mean, it could be, because I've only read
No.
8 chapters.
No. But just, I mean, in a sense, you're right, and I can see how you look at it that way, of that, in a sense, that he is kind of in denial, because it's not as much about his illness, it's about what, if he's been successful or not. We're not really talking about, we've said, yeah, I'm dying, but we're not addressing his feelings attached to that. Besides him saying he's dying, that's it. That's all he's really acknowledging as far as the illness goes. And I think that's what you're meaning when you say that about the denial, is that he's kind of compartmentalizing that and saying, no, he's not really dealing with it. He's not dealing with it head on. He has found something to kind of occupy his time, and again, being fixated on this client and his success or lack of with the client is where his focus is. But I do think the group of professionals that he meets with, is that not supposed to be kind of like a support group type of thing? Or is that, so it's not like he's the head of that group specifically, right?
No, I think that's a support group.
And even the professional parts, I mean, that makes sense to me, because you've got colleagues, you've got people that kind of have the same interest and education and mindset that you do, and I understand relying on them. I don't understand relying on your clients. I feel like that's a huge boundary that just bothers me.
It is like ethical dilemma right there. Like, I see the red lights, but apparently
He's doing everything we're not supposed to be doing.
right.
Well, when I kept reading it, I was like, I don't think this is supposed to happen. I don't feel like this is ethical in any form or fashion.
Which that kind of led to one of the questions that I was going to ask, is about, looking at the code of ethics. It seemed a little off to me. Do you all want to expound on that, on your thoughts on it?
I mean, this man is about to exchange goods for services, basically. Like, that is way past boundary crossing. He's taking advice from a client. Like, we're the
Dual relationship.
helping the client, but instead he's like, oh, well, I need you to help me. Like, this man is just crossing every boundary that we shouldn't be crossing. And it's just, reading this, I'm just like, how has he been in practice for so long and not have gotten in trouble? Like, I mean, there's no way that this is the first time he's crossing these boundaries in X amount of years, but whatever. I mean, I guess once you get sick, like, all your ethics go out the door.
Nobody cares about ethics when you're dying.
He's like, what do I have to lose at this point? What are they going to do? Take my license away? I'm fixing to die anyhow.
Yeah.
Paige, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Well, I definitely agree. Crossing a lot of lines there. Yeah, no, I guess nothing to add to that. I just agree.
I thought that, at first when he was going through the records of his clients, I thought, well, that's okay to do. You want to reflect back, and I think you always want to figure out, okay, could I have done this better? Could I have done that better? And even pondered with this particular client, maybe it wasn't just it's not that I couldn't reach him. Maybe my tact or my tactics, I don't like that word necessarily, but the way that I provide interventions was just not a good fit. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm a failure, but the client either wasn't ready or that we just reached an impasse that we couldn't get through. But I don't think that's necessarily a knock on you as a counselor. And I also know that there are times that you do follow-ups. I think it's important to have follow-ups with clients, and but not like this. And kind of letting yourself get baited in to further contact because of your own issues, personal issues. So you're, like you all said, red flags everywhere. I think he had good intentions at a point, but then he flipped that switch over. It was about me. It wasn't about really trying to see the practice itself of therapy and how it can be improved. So that was a long statement of I agree.
How long should you have? I understand having notes for clients, and I can understand that.
No.
Ashley, you're frozen again.
But information for clients at your house.
Well, I think
Can you hear me?
I think
Yeah, you're back.
his practice, was it not at his house?
Yes.
Okay.
And I know this sounds horrible, but it reminds me of The Cosby Show, where Dr. Huxtable's practice was technically in his house, but it was a separate wing of the house. So, I mean, as long as you have, if that's your plan on how you practice, then you just need to have the ability to have that stuff in a locked, confined space that confidentiality isn't breached. I don't know what the ethics are as far as length of time of keeping records, though.
I mean, I would think you're just supposed to keep records because, you don't go to a doctor and like have them throw away your records after 5 years. Like, your records are always there. So I would assume that you're supposed to keep the records because it's still medical. And what if you decide to come back in, 15 years and that therapist is still practicing, or, they may not be practicing, but that office is still open.
I guess it just bothers me because I can see him like going into his drawer or whatever, and he's got all this information and he's pulling up this person's phone number, and that just bothers me. That's not okay. I don't like it. So I feel like some of those records should go somewhere else, Sam. I don't feel like they should stay at his house.
I mean, I don't think they should stay at his house. Like, maybe get some type of storage, not have them so easily accessible. But I mean, we're not therapists, so
We're supposed to be working towards it. So
Yeah, I don't know about you all, but I call myself a therapist.
we're not therapists working out of our homes that I know of. We let our offices handle all the documentation.
And this is kind of a left turn a little bit, but I unfortunately do not know the answer to that question, Ashley. I'm sorry. I know in the past, with my prior work we had a lot of confidential stuff we had to keep. And then at some point we sent it to the central location and it was kept for up to like 10 years or something like that. But I think every agency is different based on their just internal practices and also their credentials that they're required to have for whatever insurance they're billing, those kinds of things. But one of my for my left turn question, have any of you all ever worked with clients or in your internship or in your personal lives that have reached that end of life or maybe reaching it for medical purposes?
I haven't yet, but my internship, like currently, I will be at some point dealing with end of life services. So I'll let you know how it goes when I get there.
I don't think I dealt with anyone that specifically was like on hospice, but at the assisted living that I worked at, I was just talking to a lot of people who were, very, like very old for lack of a better word, but just they're on the way to healing, but like it doesn't always look good, just getting stuck in not getting better very quickly. So, but not hospice. I haven't dealt with hospice.
What would be your thoughts on, how to work with a client like that? Not necessarily more like Julius, who is reaching potentially a life-ending event earlier than expected. But even though he's older, he's potentially having to speed up this process of moving to the end of life because of the melanoma. I know I have, there's a gentleman that's in my social circle that's in his, I think he's 87. And I always joke and say he has the old man shuffle now. Y'all know what that looks like. They don't pick their feet up when they walk, but part of that is because they don't want to fall. But we joke with him. But he's kind of got some early stages of dementia, and his wife is about 20 years younger than him, so she's having to process through this with him. And it kind of made me think of him, but also thinking about Julius and how would you work with somebody who is reaching that end of life, and to top it off, he's also a professional in the field that we're in.
That's a really good question. I feel like I'd have to think about it more. And without having dealt with someone whose life is ending way earlier than expected, I'm just kind of spitballing. But the first thing I thought of is that I feel like in that case, maybe you'd be dealing with more anger than someone who was like 90 and maybe like expecting it. I would kind of expect that you might have to work through some just bitterness and anger at the idea of losing like 15, 20 years of what you expected you were going to get. I don't know.
Well, so I'm still going through orientation and everything, but like with kids and adolescents who are finding out that they're at the end of life, they apparently feel like a lot of guilt for leaving their families behind, leaving their parents behind, leaving their siblings behind. So they feel a lot of guilt. There's fear. And then, they haven't really said anger as much, but of course, kids are different than a 20-year-old. But there is that worry that they're not going to get to do the things that they wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that would make me think also about perhaps Julius is going through that too, of feeling like he doesn't have closure. And he's trying to achieve that subconscious or consciously.
Yeah, I would definitely agree that Julius is trying to achieve closure, even though I don't think he's doing it appropriately.
Anybody else want to? I know Angel's trying to be quiet because she has a visitor.
Well, I was going to apologize for me getting up several times, but she's having bathroom issues, and I was like, oh, God, please. I hope they understand. But so I've been running back and forth, but you've been in my ears the whole time. But
we're on mute.
I was thinking whenever you were talking about how you would treat somebody that's already a therapist when you're a therapist, like when Julius' situation, I don't know about you guys, but when I already know something, I really hate it when other people try to use it on me. So I feel like working with him, he would not, you got to go sit down, Adeline. He would not like being told, or being used like the CBT on him or, any of that stuff, because he'd be sitting there like analyzing everything that you're doing because he already knows what you're doing because he's done it for so long. So I would think just being there for him, letting him vent, just letting him talk whatever he felt like he needed to talk about would be beneficial.
The kind of like narrative therapy.
Yeah.
That's a good point. So Julius, of course, is trying to get involved again with his client Philip. What's your first impression of Philip?
Smart aleck.
He's too cold for me.
Yeah, to be honest, a little creepy. Just
Yeah.
from how the book describes him, how he just like is so focused on what he's saying, doesn't really care what people think or what's going on, and how like matter of fact he says like slightly offensive things. It's like, is this guy okay? Like, I don't know.
Kind of iffy. I almost, in some of the things he says, I'm like, Asperger's, because I feel like some of the stuff he says, but then on the other hand, you're like, well, apparently he is good socially because he's had sex with all these different partners. So,
and he's really smart,
it's the truth.
He doesn't.
He must look really good because he sure doesn't know how to talk to people.
I was gonna say, I just want to know how he keeps getting all these partners.
Yes, as cold as he
does
is.
not have the personality for it.
Agreed.
I kind of like him.
Golly, Ashley, you
get roped in.
I am.
Or Julius is dying and you don't have no compassion on him, but you want to go after the other.
Because Philip's not doing wrong. He's just got his own problems. He's living his own life. He tried to get help. He didn't get help.
Well,
so he come up with his own solution. I like that.
it sounded really good, actually.
That is cold and weird.
Well, we don't know what the last 10 seconds you said was, but whatever it was, you thought it was funny.
Well, it's really my frustration about this. I'm literally sitting beside the modem, and I don't know what the problem is.
Huh.
But I like how blunt and just honest. I feel like you know where you stand with Philip. It's not wishy-washy. He's not trying to. I think he knows, because he even made a remark about that. Obviously, something was going on with Julius that was a big deal. And I can't even remember how he worded it, but that something was going on with Julius and that he knew that, but he didn't ask questions. And I think he knows what Julius is trying to figure out, and he's not feeding into Julius in a sense of, let me tell you how wonderful you are and give you this closure.
Huh.
Did you actually hear all that?
Yes.
Did.
Oh, okay.
Paige, were you going to say something? I'm sorry.
Oh, I wasn't. I just think that's interesting. Like, I still think he's creepy, but actually, but what you said actually makes sense too. That at least there's like there's nothing hidden. You know exactly what he's thinking because he says what he's thinking. So, I mean, that's true. At least you're not kept guessing or something. It's one benefit.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought, I was kind of holding off my formed opinion of this fella because, well, just knowing that it was a novel, that it was going to be probably different than what we were first introduced to, but he seemed very utilitarian to me in his approach to Julius. To me, he almost seemed the same person as he was back then, in the aspect of he saw Julius as something he could use to get where he was going, instead of really a genuineness or authenticity. So it seemed like there were still some narcissistic patterns there. He just shifted it to kind of a different avenue. So I don't know about the Schopenhauer cure. So, and because he was so hyper focused previously with having to have a woman, having sex, and getting rid of her. That was his focus. And it would meet a need for about 2.2 seconds, and then that was it. Whereas his drive then shifted to this clinician view, and he was even, to me, the narcissism, and again, I'm not a therapist, but when he's teaching to the class, watching everybody walk out, he's not gathering those social cues, which did kind of lead me, Angel, to think maybe there's a little Asperger's here. But I know some Asperger's people that they function pretty well, but you see those weird tweaks in them, and your
quirkiness, the social quirkiness is not just.
But he's not able. They can hold it together for a good period of time, but maybe the length of time he was with some of those women, that was the length he could hold it. But he kept teaching and teaching, knowing everybody else was gone. And then he said, "Hey, Julius, this whole thing was for you anyway." So I'd like to, and even the way he wasn't looking at him straight on makes me wonder if there might be some Asperger's too, because a lot of people with some of those symptoms have difficulty with engaging in eye contact. So I kind of looked at that too for you, the way you were looking at Angel, but it just seemed like he traded one thing for another. I don't know that I would call it it's safer and healthier. But again, this is just the first 8 chapters, so I don't know where it's gonna go.
Right.
But I didn't. Yeah, he was annoying, but I did also like his straightforwardness, Ashley, and what you were talking about. You knew what you were getting with him. Whereas Julius, I feel like he kind of had more of a. He was kind of coming in, sidestepping what he was really there for, and Philip was like, "What do you want?" But I don't know, that was kind of my first impression of him. Anybody else? Thoughts on Philip?
Do you think there's a power struggle between him and Julius at all?
Yes.
And that some of this could be feeding into how he is acting towards Julius?
Yeah.
I feel like yes, because when Julius asks him stuff, he'll just say parts of it, and then Julius will be like, elaborate, Philip, and he'll be like, I've said what needs to be said. You know, like he won't go in the extra mile to get, you know, Julius whatever he needs. It's like Julius has to continuously peck at him to get what he needs.
Well, and I almost think, obviously, Philip does not see their time spent together as productive when they were in therapy. So is it almost this tit for tat type of thing of, you didn't help me, so I'm not going out of my way to help you unless I'm going to get something out of it.
Samantha, Paige, you all have anything you want to respond to that?
I feel like it's hard to tell, like, without knowing Julius outside of his interactions with him, you know? Like, it's hard to tell. Like, I feel like that's an interesting point, though. Like, we don't know. Like, maybe he is acting weird because of the power struggle. Like, part of it, you know? It's hard to tell without seeing him in other scenarios.
Yeah.
I thought there was potentially a power struggle there too, but I feel like Julius walked into it believing he was superior in the first place. So you've got Philip who has said, you didn't help me, now it's your turn to watch me work. But I don't know that Philip sees it the same way Julius does. Because their brains clearly don't work the same. I mean, I'm not 100% that Philip feels like this is a power struggle. I feel like he feels like he has found this amazing thing and you didn't give it to me, but I think you still need this and I want to give this to you. I need to give this to you, but I'm still going to get something out of it.
Yeah, he found an opportunity and he's going to take it and give something in return.
Yeah. But I did like how Julius responded. He didn't respond in aggression or anger. He did fall back into some of his clinical style and not getting baited in. So maybe there was some of that power struggle. Any other thoughts?
I definitely don't think Philip was expecting Julius to throw in the, sure, I'll help you, but you have to do blah, 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 blah. It's like, you know, I'm sure he was not expecting to have to go to group.
Yeah.
I feel like if there's not a power struggle now, that maybe there will be because he's going to be supervising him. I feel like that might create some trouble.
Samantha, do you have anything you wanted to add?
No. I feel like how this plays out is going to be really interesting, and I can't wait to read further because, like, to see a clinician receiving help from a patient is not something you hear of every day. And, like, yeah, there may be a power struggle there, but there is definitely going to be some type of, like, role confusion throughout this whole thing, and I'm interested to see how that plays out.
Because that's how it started. There's role confusion everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's just going to intensify. Like,
It's gonna be bad. This is not gonna end. This is not gonna end well.
Angel's not talking because she's read ahead for a few chapters.
I actually am on like 15 or 16.
Oh, wow.
I chose not to go past it because I do not like stopping novels. If I get started, I want to know what's happening.
I've hated this. I've hated waiting because I really want to know what's going to happen next. But I'm
Are we
like,
supposed to wait?
Well, she
I
did
know.
recommend it. And that's why I said, okay, I'm going to not do it because I want to make sure I'm focusing on this week's stuff, and then I'll focus on next week's stuff.
I'm just taking notes in a notebook as I go.
Yeah, I probably should be doing.
Yeah, I'm just doing what she recommended too, because I don't want to get too ahead of myself and then come into the next book club and be like, oh no.
Spoiler alert, that's what's going to happen, Angel, if you keep reading ahead.
I will not tell you all what's going to happen. You guys just wait and see.
So do y'all have any kind of other closing remarks of your overall view of the first 8 chapters?
I think it really drew me in, and I can't wait to see more like of what happens. But it definitely gave me a new perspective on like patient-client relationships. Like my mind is just blown, but it kind of gave me the perspective that there is a reality that we can cross some boundaries there, and nobody's safe from it, even a therapist that's been a therapist for however many years this man's been a therapist. So something I learned from the book.
That's a great point, Samantha.
Oh.
Sorry, this whole like first 8 chapters just taught me about boundaries. That's where my brain went.
For me, looking at it, I am interested to see how the relationship does progress. I'm trying to go into it with an open mind, that there is something that can be learned from this. And like you said, Samantha, already the challenge of no matter how long you've been practicing, you could still fall prey to challenges when it comes to ethical issues. So I think that's a very solid point. I do look forward to seeing a little bit more about the Schopenhauer, because I think we've only been barely introduced to him in his early years, which I think is going to be how we see why he ends up where he does. So that's something I'm really interested in seeing. And even though there's some ethical boundaries here, those of us who come after are hopefully learning a lot of great lessons out of it.
Yeah, I'm curious to see like if the book itself will agree with us about the ethical dilemmas, because so far I feel like it hasn't really painted it in a negative way. But maybe that's just me, but I'm kind of curious how like the writer of the book is viewing this too.
But I wonder, because I wonder if he sees past that because this guy is now a clinician sort of himself. And I barely say that because he didn't go into that knowing that he was one. But I'm wondering if that's a way that he's going to, or I don't know if it's going to reveal itself, but if it is something that we'll see that he does discuss that ethical issue with it. Angel, Ashley, do y'all have any closing remarks? Something you look forward to? Your overall view of the first 8 chapters?
Well, I had told you earlier that I'm having issues with it going back and forth between the Schopenhauer and then back into the storyline, because like it'll stop and I'll want to finish what's going on and then I have to go through all the Schopenhauer stuff for so long. So I've not really enjoyed that part of it, but I'm making it through it. My attention span just can't hold on.
The drama with Philip and Julius is more interesting than the
Yes.
I understand. I get that. I feel the same way. I I just want to understand at some point, is he going to say, maybe this was a bad idea?
Yeah, I want to read the rest of the book to find that out, but I'm going to do as she recommended and go week by week.
Yeah. Stay tuned.
It's torture, but I'll do it.
Well, I don't know if you all realized it or not that we didn't stop. While we were here, and I don't know if you all saw it on your screen, but I saw something that said, did you all see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I thought, okay, amazing. Hopefully it's still recorded. So we basically didn't have to take our 5-minute break to start again. So what I will do is after we conclude here, it'll download and then I will send it to the professor. But it'll probably be this weekend because I still need to finish up that second part of the weekly requirement, going over the readings and what we learned. So this is going to be an interesting process. I have to say I was a little concerned because I've never led a book club before. But I think you all were really great, and I appreciate your working with me and being the first person. Next week is Angel, right?
Woo woo. Yep. I'll try not to do any spoiler alerts. I'll start asking about stuff from like 19 and 20 chapters. And
why don't you know this?
Yeah, I'll throw ends off.
We'll just be so confused.
One thing I did want to mention is learning some of the early years of that Schopenhauer, there was a lot of trauma that happened. So it kind of made me think about like the ACEs scores and how would he have done today, and and I don't know anything about the Schopenhauer cure stuff. I know nothing about this. So do you all know about?
No.
Okay, so y'all are in the same boat as me. So I'm just kind of going with eyes wide open, without trying not to have any kind of pre-existing notions about this, and just seeing where it takes me.
I don't want to like it because Philip advocates for it so much, and I'm just like, anything that Philip likes, I'm against. I can't help it, actually. Me and you were going to be like this.
Well, I started out this first book club awesomely with sticking my foot in my mouth, saying that if you're diagnosed with melanoma, you overreact. So
I forgive you.
I think it's good points to bring up, because unless you discuss things, how are you supposed to know and progress in your own life? So Angel's pretty laid back. She'll tell you if she's upset.
Yeah, I'm good.
please don't be upset. I meant nothing by it. I promise. I was not.
No, she didn't.
It was about Julius.
It's okay.
All right, beautiful people. It has been amazing. Is there anything else you all would like to add at the end of our first week of book club? All right.
You did a great job.
Well, thank you.
Very good.
Thank you. I hope that's reflected on my scores. All right, guys. Y'all have a good night, and I will see you soon.
All right. See you.
See you next week.
Bye.
Hey, guys.